All right, let's jump right into this explainer and uncover the wildly fascinating life of a foundational yet utterly eccentric figure in paleontology. We're going to explore a story that blends groundbreaking science with behavior so bizarre it almost defies belief. Honestly, if you think the history of geology is just dusty rocks and quiet libraries, well, you are in for a major surprise.
To kick things off, consider this question: who was actually responsible for describing the very first recognized dinosaur fossil? We hear a lot about the famous bone hunters of the late 19th and 20th centuries, sure, but the origins of dinosaur science go back way further, literally to a time before the word dinosaur was even invented.
And the person who first introduced the world to what we now call a dinosaur, well, he wasn't just some quiet scholar. It was a man famous for consuming mice on toast and lecturing alongside a pet bear named Tiglath-Pileser. And yes, he often dressed that bear in a cap and gown.
Meet Oxford professor of geology, William Buckland. Now, he might look like a perfectly respectable 19th century gentleman. Born in 1784 near the fossil-rich Dorset in East Devon coast, which is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site today, he was the son of an Anglican parson. He got ordained to qualify for a fellowship at Oxford, securing a home and a modest income. But behind that distinguished appearance, he was a walking contradiction, marrying deep scientific brilliance with absolute, clownish eccentricity.
Section 1. The Bear-Toting Professor. Let's look at his wildly unorthodox lifestyle.
So to satisfy his absolutely boundless curiosity about the taste of nature, he and his son Frank sampled nearly everything. I mean, just listen to this menu: panther, rhino, the trunk of an elephant, earwigs, and slugs. He once thought mole was the most disgusting thing he'd ever eaten, right up until he tried stewed bluebottles, famously declaring them even worse. There are even accounts suggesting the Bucklands served their dinner guests hedgehogs and puppies. No way, right?
But wait, was this just pure madness? Well, not necessarily. Some biographers suggest this wasn't just thrill-seeking. You see, throughout his life, Britain was experiencing a severe economic divide. The poor literally feared starvation, while the wealthy feared food riots. Squeezed by high food prices and harsh hunting laws, desperate people needed alternatives. So Buckland's wild alimentary adventures may have actually been a genuine, albeit eccentric, experiment to find alternative food sources for Britain's starving poor. He had a real social conscience.
He used this exact kind of shock value in his lectures, too. Back then, nobody at Oxford was required to study natural science, so he really had to make it engaging. One student recounted how Buckland rushed at the front row, holding a hyena skull right in a terrified undergraduate's face, and shouted, "What rules the world?" When the stunned student couldn't answer, Buckland cried out, "The stomach, sir." He'd even strut around the room imitating the gait of giant ancient birds. Sure, some colleagues found his buffoonery sickening, but his voluntary science classes always packed.
Section 2. Discovering the first dinosaur and his massive scientific breakthroughs.
Let's set the scene for the scientific landscape. Before 1824, as I mentioned, the word dinosaur did not exist. But Buckland had acquired some ancient reptilian fossils from Jurassic rock layers. Using a partial fossilized jaw with a massive jutting tooth, which had been collected way back in 1797 by his friend Sir Christopher Pegg, Buckland took a monumental step. In 1824, he published the world's very first description of what he called Megalosaurus, the great fossiled lizard.
But, he wasn't done shaking up the scientific community. At that exact same scientific meeting where he introduced Megalosaurus, he shocked the establishment again. Backed by the great anatomist Georges Cuvier, Buckland announced the first fossil mammal from the age of reptiles. Now, conventional wisdom at the time dictated that mammals only came after the great reptiles. So this tiny mammal fossil completely shattered the scientific consensus of his day.
Section 3. The Science of Fossil Poo. Buckland pioneers coprology.
Yep, he pioneered coprology. While exploring Kirkdale Cave, a site rich in animal remains, he kept finding these mysterious white spheres. While others had completely misidentified them for centuries, Buckland realized they were actually ancient droppings. He understood that these coprolites could reveal crucial information about both the eater and the eaten, basically unlocking the secrets of ancient ecosystems. A real game changer. To prove his theory, he conducted an absolutely wild experiment. He literally took a pet hyena, fed it hapless guinea pigs, and studied what the hyena threw up or pooped. And get this, he did this entirely inside his house. Can you imagine the toll that took on his wife's patience? But it worked. The modern hyena output perfectly matched the ancient Kirkdale cave fossils, proving they contained bone fragments of the hyena's ancient prey. He even went as far as injecting quick-drying cement into modern fish intestines just to prove the origins of corkscrew-shaped coprolites. The man was dedicated for sure.
Section 4. Faith, Family, and Science. How he balanced his life and work.
Throughout all of these incredible milestones, it's important to note he didn't do this alone. At age 41, he married 28-year-old Mary Moreland, and their honeymoon? A 10-month tour visiting scientific luminaries. Mary was brilliant in her own right. She not only did field work with him, but she'd stay up night after night taking his dictation while the rest of the household slept. She was absolutely crucial to his monumental discoveries. His discoveries were vast. In 1822, alongside his hyena work, he found an ancient human skeleton. He initially, and correctly by the way, identified it as male. But later, perhaps in a characteristic jest, he reversed his decision, proclaimed the skeleton a female witch, and named it the Red Lady of Paviland. It's a name that has stubbornly stuck in archaeological history ever since.
Now, as an ordained minister, Buckland's relationship with religion was really complex and thoughtful. Unlike the scriptural geologists of his day, he completely rejected a literal interpretation of Genesis. He readily acknowledged that the earth supported life long before humans arrived. In his 1836 Bridgewater Treatises, he devoted himself to reconciling deep geologic time with the plans of a great architect, arguing that ancient geological phenomena weren't created solely for humans, but were part of a grander, divine plan.
What's truly remarkable is how open his mind was. For instance, when Louis Agassiz proposed the Ice Age theory, Buckland set out with the express purpose of ridiculing it. But upon actually looking at the physical evidence in the field alongside Agassiz, Buckland completely changed his tune. As one colleague noted, he returned converted, willingly trading his older, established beliefs to support the brand-new Ice Age theory.
Section 5. A final geologic jest, and his place in the deep history of the earth. In 1845, the Bucklands left Oxford for London, where William became the Dean of Westminster. It was this grand home with 16 staircases, and he actually used his elevated position to badger local landlords who were mistreating their struggling tenants. But sadly, his final years were incredibly rough. He fell into severe dementia. After he died in 1856, an autopsy ordered by his son revealed advanced decay in his top 3 vertebrae and the base of his skull, which was likely caused by tuberculosis.
But even in death, Buckland had one final adventure left. You see, while he was still lucid, this astute geologist specifically picked out his own grave plot. When it came time to actually bury him, gravediggers discovered that the site he had chosen sat right on top of a thick layer of solid Jurassic limestone, just inches below the surface. It was so incredibly tough that they literally had to blast it out of the way with explosives just to dig his grave.
Which really leaves us wondering, did the pioneer of the dinosaur, the guy who ate bluebottles and terrified students with hyena skulls, purposefully orchestrate this impenetrable Jurassic grave as his final, eternal punchline? Just a final jest from the ground itself? Either way, it is a perfectly fitting testament to a man who lived, breathed, and ultimately rested in the deep, unyielding history of the Earth.